So unfortunately I pressed the wrong button on our last video, so I guess this is a part 2. So if you remember, we're still talking about absolute value from lesson 2.2. So in part 2 here, we're going to take a look at ordering numbers from least to greatest. And notice there's a little bit of a challenge here because these aren't just our typical integers with positives and negatives. We have some absolute value symbols happening in here. Well, if you remember from earlier, when we were comparing our absolute values, we really had to show our work. So I really want to show you what the absolute value of -3 is worth. Well, if you remember, it's 3 units away from 0. So I can think of this as a positive 3. 5 is already a number or an integer all on its own, so we'll leave it alone. What about here, the absolute value of -15? That's really 15 away from 0. So we'll change this to a 15, at least when we're thinking about it. We'll think about it as a 15. And these other numbers, they're already integers. We don't really have to do much changing or much math work with that. We are now ready to consider ascending order, going from least to greatest. So the smallest value out of my 3, 5, 15, 0, or -15 is going to be the most negative. Well, the only negative I really have to think about is this -15. Don't be fooled by that absolute value. Remember, we're going to get a positive result, or they're worth a positive distance when we're done. Well, next, I'm trying to move from my least to my greatest. -15 was the smallest. There are no other negatives to really think about. So next I'm crossing over 0. Oh good, 0's here. 0 would be separating my negatives from positives on the number line. If I keep going, I really would run into 3. But notice that wasn't 3 the way it was originally written. They wrote it in kind of a sneaky manner. They wrote it using this absolute value symbol, the absolute value of -3. So when I give them their answer back, I really want to show them the same notation. I want to show them, yes, I showed my work over here, but in the final answer, I'm going to show you the original numbers I was given in the set. All right, what comes next? Well, I have 5 or 15. 5 would be greater than the value of 3, and 15 is even more than that. So it sounds like 5 comes next, and 15 would be last. Be careful. Something about my notation went wrong. The 5 was given to us as a 5, but this value of 15 came from an absolute value of -15. So I want to give them the original notation back. I'm going to make this a list. We'll just show some quick commas here, and this is really the answer they're looking for. Let's try another. Here I have a -7, no math to do. A -12, well, it's already a value of -12, but look at this, absolute value bars around this 3. That means how far does 3 live away from 0 on the number line? The answer is 3. Well, let's look at this next one, more absolute value symbols. The absolute value of -4. Well, how far away is -4 from 0 on the number line? I counted backwards, 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. I would get there. So this is a value of 4. Let's take a look at this. The absolute value of 10 is really a distance of 10 away from 0. I'm ready to put these in order. So the smallest number would be the most negative value I have. And remember, I kind of want to look beyond these absolute value symbols and really look at the value that they mean. So the only negative numbers I have to choose from are -7 and -12. And I know which one's farther to the left, -12, so it's worth less. Well, one negative down. Are there any more negatives to think about? Moving closer to 0 on my number line, oh, there's a -7. -7 comes next. There is no 0 this time, separating my negatives from my positives, but I can picture if all my negatives are gone and I'm moving up my number line, I'm going to hit positives next. Well, treat these like 3, 4, and 10 for a minute. Who comes next in order? Actually, kind of looks like it is in order. 3 would come next. 4 would come next, and 10 is even greater than that. It's the greatest number in the set. But be careful. Do you notice that these absolute value bars were on these 3 numbers in the set? They should also appear in my answer. We're just taking the set I was given and making a list. So this 3 really came from the absolute value of 3. This 4 really came from the absolute value of -4. And this 10 really was the absolute value, or the distance from 0 on the number line to get to 10. This would be my final answer. The next thing we're going to look at in the third part of the video is really some challenging word problems. But hopefully, in a quick review, we can remember today absolute value always means a distance. How far away a number lives from 0 on a number line. And if we talk about distance, we know it's always positive.